Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with the surroundings. We are in the ATC, Advanced Technology Center, and we welcome you to tonight's program. I'm proud to say that the person that's going to be speaking tonight to give his Enlightened Entrepreneur journey graduated from the Business Innovation Center just recently and moved to his new location. So I want everyone to say congratulations to Chris Josten in his new move, and welcome to the center.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to have some fun while we're here today. Hopefully it goes that way. We'll see. So I know some of you I have in classes. Some I haven't met. Others, this is your first time. So as Pam mentioned, I founded Curiosity 3.5 years ago. Before that, I didn't really know where we were going, what I was doing, and so today I'm going to start from the beginning, graduating high school, and talk about the path that I went. I do have a BS in graphic design from Florida State and a master's degree in animation and digital media from the Academy of Art University. One of the big things that you'll see throughout this process is pivoting. Throughout my career, I guess you could say, there's been a lot of pivots. Pivots kind of become the go-to term these days. I call them mini failures, but more importantly, they're learning moments. They're the defining piece of not only what my journey is, but any entrepreneur's journey is. So as you guys move through your entrepreneur life, if it's starting a business or joining another one, just remember that a failure is not necessarily a bad thing. So taking you back to high school, graduate high school, the first thing I did was I came to Gulf Coast. Didn't know what I really wanted to do. My dad's a doctor. I figured, hey, let's go to medical school, right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to follow in his footsteps. His practice is set. This was me, right? I'm going to do it. I'm going to tackle it. And yeah, all I can say is chemistry sucks. Went through high school, barely passed chemistry. Anatomy was a breeze, right? Get here, take the first chemistry class. Have any of you taken chemistry here? Some of you have, yeah. Barely passed Chem 1, barely. Get into Chem 2, study for the midterm, took 2 days off work. Studied, get into the exam. I get a 36. 36, I was like, you know what? At this point, I'm done. It's not for me. I'm working too hard. I'm not enjoying it. So I shifted to the graphic design program here, one of the first to actually go through an AA with graphic design in the school. So it was kind of the technology you have in this building is not what we had back then. Let's just say that. So I finished my AA here, moved to Tallahassee, did my bachelor's in graphic design there, and I was hitting the career path, right? I'm going to get a job, do what I love, graphic design, and then I realized my lesson experience number one. Experience. Everyone wanted experience. How many of you have walked into a job interview and they said, well, you really don't have the experience we need? Any of you? It happens all the time, right? So one of the big defining moments for me was, shoot, I have all my careers, all my classes from school, I have my portfolio from that, but it wasn't enough. So I finally found a job in my first gig. It was literally designing signs for a sign shop. That's all I did. Red vinyl, white signs. You see them all the time, the for sale signs, the garage sale signs. That was my first gig. It was not fun. But I knew I needed the experience, and I needed to put the drive in to make that step. So after I gained a little bit of experience, built a portfolio, I then landed a job as an editor designer for a publisher out in Port St. Joe. There, I was putting together a magazine, working with real estate agents. I had a much more diverse clientele. At that point, I started to have a little bit of growth. The big point here, 2 hours of travel each day. He's jumping around. So I would drive, and of course, I want to make a note. Dylan, our designer's in the corner over here. He's doing the same thing I did. He drives the opposite way now, 2 hours. So I was kind of like, work from home a day or so. I know how it feels. So, but to me, someone that's willing to put in that extra time to make the drive shows the commitment to what they're trying to do. And so each way, 2 hours, 8 to 10 hour days, it gets to be a churn. A year later, the opportunity came to literally move down the street. I walked out the back door, found out that the competitive company down the road needed a designer, and I thought, why not? I've tapped out here, let's continue to grow. So then I moved down the road, literally 2 blocks, to my next job, which I stayed at for 5 years. At this job was really when I had the first glimpse of entrepreneurship. The reason being is I had the background in signage and building signs and designing them and putting the materials together, doing the orders, where the company that I worked for did not have a division, did not have the know-how or anything to build that side of the company. So what they asked me to do was, can you help? So I said, sure, why not? Went down to Orlando, the biggest sign conference in the world. We picked out our sign equipment, we picked out our suppliers, our wholesalers, and we brought everything back. After that, being in advertising and working with it over the years, I built the marketing plan, built our profit margins, and then we executed it. And to this day, after leaving there and we're building it, they are technically the biggest sign supplier in Port St. Joe now, and they've branched out to Panama City and stuff. So being able to lay that groundwork for a company was just very satisfying. So for me, though, I got antsy. It wasn't comfortable to just sit there at that point in my life. So I started to search around and say, okay, well, where can I move next? What's the area? So I started to shop around. I shopped here, Pensacola, back to Tallahassee, north to Dothan. And what I was finding that was available was not worth the move. So I'm like, all right, I want to provide for my family. I want to continue my growth as an individual. So what's next? At this point, I've always shown interest in 3D animation, visual effects, 3D models, simulations and such. So I enrolled, I did research, saw that there was a huge spike in 3D jobs, big salaries at this time. Yes, we'd have to move to California or whatever, but we were willing to make the move. So I enrolled in grad school. The grad school program I chose was literally the hardest program I could have picked. Academy of Art out of San Francisco is one of the top 3D schools in the country, and my professors were literally the guys working on films. The program director worked on Yoda and Star Wars. I knew Gears of War was coming out 2 years before Gears of War was even announced. So the level that they demanded was extremely high. My first semester, and this is kind of a kill to my man card, but I cried my first semester. Literally, one of my professors goes, "Are you sure you're in the right place? Are you sure this is for you?" And I had to think about it. I mean, grad school, out of state, in California, if you add any of your tuition up and put all 3 of those together, it was a hefty bill. I had to decide if it was worth the time. So I talked with my wife, and I kind of regathered myself, and I thought, you know what? No, I'm not going to let this guy, this one person, beat me. And actually ended up graduating in one of the tops of my class, and really pushed it. And at the end of that semester, the most gratifying part about it was that professor came to me. We had video conferences at that time, and he came and goes, I just want to let you know you could do that. And ever since then, my mentality has shifted from entrepreneurship to learning some of you in my classes that are here notice the passion that I have for what I teach. This might not work. You maybe carry two things? You press some buttons. Let's see. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh yeah, battery's dead. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. All right, so now I'm going to juggle next. So yes, grad school. After I finished grad school, well, actually, while I was in grad school, we had our first kid. If you have dealt with, well, you haven't dealt with grad school, some of you have dealt with grad school yet, it's intensive in itself. Add a kid to the mix and driving to and from work an hour each way, that got intense. So I started to look at ways that I could move closer to home, less driving back and forth. So I ended up shifting my schedule, going 3 to 4 longer days a week, putting in 12, 15 hours each day so that I could have a little more time from home. This was kind of before the internet really took off and there was no real thing as remote working. So we kind of made some shifts and adjustments that route. And the biggest defining point there was I was missing those moments. You know, I missed the first time my daughter walked. And the, you know, there's just those little things that kind of said, you know, this is not what I want. So then it became, what's the next step? What's my next move? So in order to supplement and slowly transition out of Port St. Joe, I stepped into doing a lot of freelance work. So logo design, brochures, T-shirts. There was a sign shop locally that, or a print shop locally that I did all their T-shirt designs. I'd come home from work, 10-hour day, do my schoolwork, then hit the T-shirt designs and get them knocked out, just to have that extra income so we could build it up to where I could move back home. Then a new opportunity presented itself, and it was web design and development. Out of nowhere, one of my freelance clients, someone approached me and said, you know, I've got a website. Do you want to handle it? And I'm like, I've never touched it. And I'm like, she goes, can you handle it? I'm like, yes. In my brain, I'm thinking, no. And so I said yes. Knew nothing about web design, zero. Had not touched a lick of code, had not figured out how to design user experience, nothing. So at that point, I went home and started learning. Project was given to me on Friday. That weekend was the most frustrating learning experience of my life. Above grad school, above school in general, learning anything new, a sport, learning code for the first time was one of the most frustrating things for me. I worked through it, delivered the project, and it wasn't perfect, but it worked. The client signed off on it, and at that point, it really started to feed. I'm like, man, this is actually fun. You know, it's taking design a step further. So then I started researching a little bit more. I started studying marketing trends. I started, you know, moving towards web and in general heavy. I was like, man, this is going to be the next thing. So I started every weekend outside of school. I kept researching web, keep researching web. So at this point, I'm working full-time, freelancing, learning web development, and going to grad school. I'm surprised I'm not divorced. But my wife is one of the most understanding people to go through all this with me. This leads into lesson number 2. Always seek advice. So as I'm freelancing, doing all the web development, I'm doing design, I start thinking, man, I could really start to do some of this. I've got enough now where I can make it move on my own. So I start asking advice. One of the biggest things you don't want to do is ask a future competitor for advice. And this was a defining point for me because the person that hired me to do the website owned a web marketing company that me as the freelancer did not know that was her main specialty. So at that point I said, all right, let me help you. So I came in, I took a creative director position underneath her. We started building websites, and we rebranded the company, which looked more like a tech IT company, and we moved it to a company that was web and media. So we were doing web design, social media management, optimization, the stuff you're learning now in a lot of the classes. So this position, I then stayed there. I didn't plan on staying there. I'm still going to grad school. I'm like, this is just going to help my career as I move forward. Finished grad school. And so now I have a degree. The industry tanked. Everything, the big career, $100,000 jobs, $150,000 jobs that I had talked about and seen were gone. It's all gone. Don't know what happened there. Let's just refresh it. Don't push that button. So the industry tanked. Everything was sent offshore. Everything went to India, went to the Philippines. And so I had job offers. I mean, I had offers from Disney. I had offers from Sony. All these were in the works. And nothing actually came to fruition. The good news about it was Sony closed the animation house I was talking to. Digital Domain closed the animation house that I was talking to. So out of the grace, I actually was saved by not moving and then losing my job. So at that point, the only thing I could find on average for, once again, I don't have the experience out of my master's degree, is San Francisco got offers $40,000 to $50,000 to move my family out there to be a 3D modeler. If you're familiar with San Francisco, you can't move a family out to San Francisco and support them on $40,000. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what the hell do I do now, right? So this is kind of the start to the defining point of where curiosity came from. And I call that my biggest pivot, because when we made that decision, we've never looked back, and it's probably one of the best decisions we've ever made as me and my wife as a family. And yeah, I finished grad school, I was frustrated, and I literally looked at Christy, my wife, and I said, why not? What do we have to lose? Now it's scary. It was extremely scary. It still is scary. But the biggest thing that I can tell you as the third lesson, and it's probably the biggest lesson, if anyone ever thinks they're going to start a business and it's not going to be a lot of work, you got it wrong. It takes a lot of work. But the benefits, being able to give employees jobs, bring people on as a team, and help grow younger people, and most of all for us as a company, helping other businesses grow, it's like the gold mine of entrepreneurship. It's not just our business we're growing, it's every one of our clients that we're growing. So, start the company, I leave the creative director position, I get to my office, which at this point is my garage. All the great things are started in garages, so just keep that in mind. And this isn't my inbox, but this is what my email looked like. I literally sat at my desk and said, all right, where's my first email? Nothing came. So then it's like, all right, that's the point where you got to decide, are you going to make this work? Or are you going to try to sit back and wait? If I would have sit back and wait, I would have been back in school and figuring out what was next type of thing. Or divorced. So the next step for me was networking. I started to, I made the announcements on social media. We, joined social networking groups. I do it for a living. I should know how to speak it, right? Met with prior clients. Yeah, I didn't have a non-compete. So I was very selective with who I talked with, but out of respect, I didn't go after all clients, just the ones that said they were waiting on me to leave. And so they followed me as well. I also visited every print house in the area from Port St. Joe to Pensacola to Dothan and actually said, literally walked in, introduced myself, and explained what we did. Out of that, we were able to get a couple partners on board that started feeding us leads. So, of course, they don't do web design. I turned around and gave them a commission, say, hey, get me in the door. I'll take care of you. And that's kind of how we had our first, kind of run of new clients. And I added the previous employer. I'm not one to just leave someone high and dry. Never have been. I knew there was projects that I left on the table. So out of a sign of good faith, I went to my previous employer and said, hey, these projects have to be done. You don't have anyone to do it. Let me finish them. So I finished them. It was not a good experience, as you can probably imagine. But it helped build revenue for the company. The other thing is we took out 0 loans. We built the business from nothing. Literally anything I could sell on eBay was sold on eBay. And we raised enough money on eBay selling stuff to help support our family in the first initial growth. So and to this day, our company is completely debt-free, and that is one thing that I'll always stand for, is we will never go into debt. And that's what we'll continue to do. The next step for us was I got antsy at one job, got antsy at another, I got antsy again, and I wanted faster growth. I wanted, to move to Dothan, and so we started to branch out. We got clients in Atlanta. We've got some clients out of California, kind of one-off jobs. But it just wasn't enough for us to expand outside of Panama City. At this point, it's kind of hard to read, but one of the Facebook groups that I signed up for, I call it one of our big breaks. And it was actually Jamie Thomas, who owns Visual Goodness, literally posted in his Facebook group saying, hey, I need web devs. I need developers. I need animators, anyone I can get my hands on. And I was like, right here, what do I need to do? I need this work. It gets us out of the area. They're based in New York. So for it to come across, and at this point too, I got on Facebook once a week. It was not where I didn't have time, as bad as it sounds. But I did not have time. So this hits me, and at that point, I viewed their reel. I bugged the hell out of them for a meeting, and then within the first couple months, we had our first site. The site that we built was actually for Toyota. It was a whirlwind of a 2 weeks build for me. At this point, it was still only me, so we needed to kind of get that revenue stream moving. So I'm trying to run the business, get the clients, and build this site, which is extremely complicated. But over the years, that kind of cemented the relationship that we have with Visual Goodness. And now, what Visual Goodness has allowed us to do, and that relationship has allowed us to build outside our area. So now we've got, I'm sure you recognize a lot of the brands here. So at the top are kind of agencies, but you've got Puma, NFL, U.S. Air Force, Monday Night Football, Nike. I think I've got some on the other slide. Trick Cereal. We're doing stuff for them now. And it's really allowed not only for us as a company to grow, but as individuals to grow in our skills as well. Dylan, for example, is getting in I hope you don't mind me throwing you in. You showed up, so you kind of volunteered. I know, so there we go. But, the growth, Dylan's been with us right at a year, and the growth I've seen in Dylan over just the past year by having access to these projects has been tremendous. So it's helped. So right now, we're 3.5 years in. We've got 6 employees. We've gone local. We've worked regional. We're national now. We picked up a client about 2 months ago out of Seattle. So now we've got clients literally from coast to coast. The moon is still on our schedule. I don't know how soon that one will come, but it's there. These are just some of the current clients. You'll recognize some of them are local, and you'll recognize some of the ones along the bottom, but clients out of, Chattanooga, Seattle, Atlanta, there's a ton of them. St. Simon's Island. It's allowed us to grow. Problems along the way. When we first started, we were a full service agency. We wanted to do everything. Dumb. The reason I say that is, right, it was just a couple of us when we started the company. We had no specialization. We were trying to do video production. We were trying to do audio. We were doing media buys for the radio. We were trying to do it all. It just was not feasible. So what we did is we fine-tuned our offerings. We literally backed all the way to where we only did web development. We built websites. We turned them over to the client. We built the next one. We turned it over to the client. We became, like the old saying says, we were the master of one. The other thing that we really pride ourselves on now and then is we're the best devs in the area, period. We don't let anything go out the door unless it's bug checked. We don't let anything go out the door unless it's up to code standards. A lot of people around here don't do that, but I'll leave that alone. So we became the master of one. We became the web house. We know any website we do, we're trying something new that's going to be used a year from now. Outside of that, the biggest problem, and I still deal with it today, is fear. Year one, we paced. We made money, but we paced. It was just me, brought on an intern, and that was it. Year two, still hesitant. Started to see a little bit, but I was still not as much growth as we wanted to see. And that's where we had one defining point where I turned to Pam and the Business Innovation Center. One of the biggest things I learned with working with the Business Innovation Center was that fear was okay, as long as you had a plan to deal with it. And so over the past year and a half since starting our journey with the Business Innovation Center, I've said, screw fear, let's just make something work. So we go from one employee to an intern to now we have 6 employees and we'll hire another 2 in the next year. Fear is probably your biggest stumbling block. And what are you scared about? If you have the drive, run with the drive. So what advice can I give? Always, always, always seek knowledge. This is in any walks of life. The biggest thing I've learned over the years is always seek out knowledge. This can be in a new sport. It can be in building a business. It can be anything. But never let yourself get stagnant. The other thing I can say is always find support. Never be too prideful not to ask for help. Guarantee you I know there's resources because I've used them, but there's tons of resources at your disposal here at the college. I ended up hiring a consultant out of Boise to essentially help us grow the business. He does the same thing, but he's over in Boise, so he's technically not a competitor. Well, he is now, but he wasn't at the time. So we hired a consultant. We worked with the BIC. You guys have the VBOC if you have any military roots. The SBDC is still good. And seek out other business owners. And other business owners have been through it. One way or another, they've probably stumbled upon the issue you're having. The keep learning is another point. Never sit stagnant, always keep learning. It kind of bridges the gap from the other slide. But always try something new when you can. Like I said, with every web project, there's something new we want to try. I challenge my staff, in any project, try something new with each opportunity. Keep up with the times. Don't get stuck in a rut and get into a process, follow that process, and just run with that. You will never grow. For us, we like to use the term web years. A lot of you have probably heard dog years. Technology in our industry has blown past what happens in a year is probably 5 years worth of tech that it was 2 years ago. So we use web years in our industry. And then finally, if you are not using YouTube as a reference yet, you must be living in a hole. YouTube has defined the learning atmosphere, I guess you could say, for anything. Changing a tire, changing a taillight, changing your oil, fishing. You can find a resource on YouTube. And there's a lot of epic fails if that's one of your things too. So, one of the other things that I've started about 2 years ago is reading as many books as I can. You see the orange one? Yeah. Overall, the past 2 years since I've put fear behind me, reading books and reading not self-help books, but the right mindset books has made a tremendous difference. So a couple of them, The Entrepreneur's Roller Coaster, I read that one really late. I read that one about 6 months ago. I'm like, where the heck was this when I started the company? But if you're just getting into entrepreneurship, if you're just looking to start a business or just curious, pick up The Entrepreneur's Roller Coaster. It's a huge, huge help in terms of understanding what you'll go through, but then also if you're in it, others are in it as well. Start with why. It's an entire book on deciding why you're doing something. It talks about why Apple designed the iPhone the way it did, and further goes on what Apple's philosophy is. But more importantly, the book talks about if you're going to do something, why are you doing it? Because when it really comes down to it, the why is what's going to keep you chugging at 10 o'clock at night. It's going to keep you driving towards that next day after you have a really crappy one, because it does happen. That why is your biggest driver. Traction, and that one is a straight business book that literally talks about gaining traction in your business. A lot of businesses slip, like a tire slips on the ice. Getting traction and keeping it is very important. The other one, the orange one, The Subtle Art, I came across this one on Amazon. Now, if bad language offends you, skip it. But overall, the book is the best mindset book I've ever read. And the reason is because if you let the little things get in your head, it will destroy you. It'll pause everything you're doing. So now, I look at some of the small things. I'm like, you know, we call them. What do we call them? Micro pivots. Yeah, whatever. You know, it's the little things that used to really drive us nuts. They don't drive us nuts anymore. It's the big ones. Those are the ones you need to worry about. But any of the others, let them slide by. And any of you that are not a Gary Vee fan, and has everyone heard of Gary Vee? Just some of you. If you have not heard of Gary Vee, look up Gary Vaynerchuk on social media, YouTube. Same thing with the language; he doesn't care. But if you want down to earth advice on business and real world experience, he's one of the best in the industry. He's one of my role models. He has a $600 million agency in New York right now. So, to recap, as you guys are starting to build your careers and build your systems and stuff, always remember, experience is key. The more experience, the more drive you can put into what you're doing, the better you're going to be about it. Always seek advice. Never be afraid to ask questions. Hard work always pays off. And always, always, always find the drive. If you don't find the drive, you will fail. So it goes all the way back to the original slide with do what you love. I ended up in graphic design. It was something I enjoyed ever since I was 16. I'm now 19 years into my career, and I haven't looked back. So I appreciate your time. Any questions?
We need you to talk into the mic. So if anybody has questions, thank you, Chris. Here, hold on. I have social anxiety. All right, tell us your question.
You mentioned that you employed 6 people.
Yeah.
On your website, you have 10 people listed, including Jamie Thomas as your strategist.
Yes.
So is 6 correct or is 6?
Okay, hold on. I'm going to repeat the question. So on his website, there are more people than how many people you mentioned are actually staffed. So tell us about that.
So, when's this paper due?
Saturday.
Can you turn it in after Tuesday?
No.
Who's your teacher? Hey, Emmanuel, can we turn this in after Tuesday? Or can we keep it quiet until after Tuesday? All right, so so the reason you see 10 people on our site instead of the normal 6 is for a couple reasons. One, I am going to tell it a little early. So the next step of our growth, yes, we launched the site because we were trying to set it up for it. So
She's doing research on you.
she is doing research.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the big announcement that we haven't really made public yet is, as of a month ago, we have fully partnered with Visual Goodness. So the reason you're seeing them on the site is because they have stepped in to help us as a partnership, and we're continue to push. And what that does is allows our strategy area to be extremely deep.
And that's going to go through HubSpot that you just partnered with too?
And HubSpot, man, you did good. So HubSpot's a platform we use for marketing and automation. We've worked with HubSpot. This is actually my 4th year. Took a little break from them because they made me mad. But yeah, so I've been working with HubSpot for 4 years now. We signed on as a partner with them 2 years ago, or right at 2 years ago. And so we've grown enough and we have enough workings with them that we're now seen as a certified partner with them. So we're listed in their directories. We're pulling business from other areas. Yeah, that's where the silver partnership comes from. Yeah.
Any other questions? Hold on.
You get the mic.
You want?
Would you advise other people to get their master's degree?
That's a loaded question in an educational facility. So I can tell you from experience, I'm not using my degree directly in my business, but, and there's a big but, what that degree has allowed me to do is teach here. Without that degree, I would not be able to mold the minds and work with the students that I've had the experience working with over the past 3 years. That's one thing I didn't include up here, but I've taught adjunct here for 3 years. Without that degree, I couldn't do that. Does it pay off in the industry? Sure. If it's the right area, absolutely. There's still, now with how many people are getting bachelor's degree, 15 years ago, bachelor's was seen as the thing. If you had a bachelor's degree, that's where you moved. Well, now you've got the saturation of bachelor's degree, so now master's degrees are starting to look like that next step. So in a roundabout way, yes, absolutely, a degree is, if it fits where you're going, by all means, pursue it. Just make sure that you're smart about it and don't go too far in debt if you don't need to. Yeah.
Questions?
Bring it.
Hey, Chris. So what are the ups and downs of being based in Panama City?
There's both. The biggest up is you're at the beach, man. I mean, the area, the environment, being able to put a boat in and go fishing an afternoon after work with the time change. There's so many advantages. The disadvantage for our business is we want bigger clients, and that us as being local in Panama City has affected that some. That's where this partnership that we have moving forward is helping that situation grow. We're getting into the bigger areas, the bigger clients, and so that's kind of the up and downs. I mean, Panama City, I've grown up here, moved away, came back. A lot of you will do the same thing, even though you say you won't. So that's kind of the difference there, yeah.
So I have two questions, right? I'm going to piggyback on that one. Well, first we have like 3 different courses here. 2 of them are mine. We have a sales class and we have a management and leadership class. I want you to speak to them a little bit, some of the challenges of how do you actually create a sales strategy from here, right? I'm asking some of them to do sales locally and they complain. So I just want you to talk to them a little bit about, what are some of the challenges when you try to do a national sales strategy? And the second question is related to management, right? How or what are the challenges building teams and managing them? Because I know you have some virtual employees. And again, some of my other students complain that how can we get something accomplished if we don't meet in the same room and we don't communicate, every single day of the week, right? So they don't cry yet that I know of. I haven't seen any cry
Don't
yet.
cry, then you haven't worked them hard enough.
I know, right? That's kind of my goal, but don't tell them that yet.
So let's take sales in general first. So on the sales side of things, we have a very inbound approach to our sales. So what we do is we define who our main target is, our practical persona that we know we can work with and build a business around. We take that persona, we refine the messaging, and then we start building content and put it out in the wild to form around that. We've had contact from people in China just from forming our personas, building that content. So we do very, very little paid advertising. The clients out of Seattle, the clients out of Atlanta have found us organically through our persona placements. Management, dude, is tough. We have built a system. We have worked virtual. We kind of adapted to it. We got lucky because Visual Goodness has been virtual for 2 years after being in 15 years in New York. So that's kind of helped us adapt a system. But if you say you can't work remotely this day, you're doing something wrong. Between Skype, Slack, Google Talk, Hangouts, Blue Jeans, GoToMeeting, Google Drive, Dropbox, you name it, there is a solution for you. And so the big thing, and I hear it in my class too with group projects, well, we need to meet in class. No, you don't. You don't. It's just getting the systems in place. So virtual tools for virtual teams.
Anybody else?
Hey, I had a question. I'm a military spouse. So as being a spouse, my idea with moving around, would you have any advice about how to still pursue my entrepreneur ideas while still having the chance of being shot overseas?
Yeah,
or wherever?
build an internet business. Period. I mean, honestly, e-commerce these days, Amazon, Shopify, there are strategies now. You can pick a product, drop ship it from anywhere, and not even have to see it. YouTube will show you how to do that. Really, in most cases, if you are, and we've talked with military families, military business owners before, and really, same thing with everything being virtual. E-commerce is such a big piece of mercantile these days. It's still overlooked. You can make an extra $500,000 a weekend by going to yard sales, taking what you buy at a yard sale for $1 and put it on eBay. You'd be surprised. That's how we built our first revenue stream. Even now, I'm like, all right, well, what's our next step? Well, I'm exploring how to open my own print brokership online. How do we build our own e-commerce store to sell web templates and sell things? And I hate saying web templates because we don't use them, but that's a revenue stream that people do use. So as to you as military, I would look at something that you can do from anywhere. Consultancy, as you grow your agent, your experience. Consultants are from Alaska consulting people in Florida. you know. So, and the other side of it too is build a business where people can see, you know, medical transcription is another one. Upload to of course, it has to be HIPAA compliant these days, stupid government. But, you know, have that pass that goes back and forth. But, you know, there are opportunities, and we can talk afterwards if you want and start looking at some of them. But there's a ton of them. Yes.
For, for those of you who didn't hear, and for the camera, VBOC is a resource for those, particularly military spouses, to talk about entrepreneurship and ideas that you may have.
And we've seen some, actually we have a couple of clients that have started there, and we've helped build the sites and support there. Great team over there, so definitely look that up for sure.
Any other questions? We have time for a couple more.
Are there any other books that you would recommend besides the ones in the slideshow?
What are you looking for in terms of?
Practical applications for entrepreneurship.
We've got another entrepreneur here. It's a good discussion.
Just do it.
So yeah, to add to that, one of the biggest things I can say, the longer you wait and hesitate, the longer you're delaying your growth. You know, so make the leap when you feel like it's the right time. Now, sometimes it's not the right time. Other times you just get sucked into it. But researching only gets you to more research. Until you finally make that leap and make that first step, it's just like running a marathon. I can say I'm going to run a marathon every day. But until that day, and I don't look like I do it now, but until that day when I stepped out and actually started to run and then go to where I finished that marathon, that's the steps you need to follow even in growing a business. So, yes, read the books, visit YouTube, look at social, but when you're ready to do it, just do it.
Well, on that note, I think that's a great note.
Absolutely. And I want to thank Chris for coming out. He's going to be having an open house
Next Tuesday
at his new location at 109 Harrison Avenue. So make sure you tell everybody who is looking for web design where they need to go. Curiosity Marketing Group. They are a great team, and I am very proud to have them be part of what we've done. And he's always been a great mentor. So he is someone you can reach out to. If there's something that comes up after you're gone from here, know that you can reach out to Chris. He gets back to you pretty quickly.
I try.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I have business cards, brochures, everything on the table. Grab them on your way out.
So let's give him a hand, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And I'll hang if you guys have any individual questions or anything. I don't mind talking one-on-one for a little while. So our next event, Kevin Elliott will be coming in to do a class on LinkedIn for business development. LinkedIn's a tool that is very overlooked, and this is kind of ad hoc to the post here. So I'm going to try to make it that Tuesday. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you need one now. Start building your group now. So, but Kevin's a very good speaker, so don't miss that one.